I've heard a lot of people complain about the current state of Summoners War RTA or World Arena over the last, I want to say 6 months, but in particular, it's gotten quite bad recently. From my experience too, the current state of the game feels really just unfun and even uncompetitive at times. I mean, we can just yell at the screen and complain that the meta is trash, but I've always sort of had an idea of what was sort of wrong with the current meta, but I've never really collected, all my thoughts and ideas and put it into one place like this. So basically that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a look at that. So I've taken an approach of watching high-level G3 games, my own experience over the last 3-ish seasons, and raw data from SW ranking. And pretty much, overall, I think that the biggest issues plaguing competitive RTA at the moment, and the main things are slow bruiser-style drawn-out games, units that have mechanics that basically entirely rely on RNG, being in high usage, like in the top 10, and to a lesser extent, more recently, a loss of monster diversity, leading to a really top-heavy meta. And just to start, I'm quite confident that the recent balance patch change has been a major catalyst for what we're seeing right now. So let's just have a look at the 5 units that were nerfed in the most recent patch. So we'll have a look at Gianna, for example. How has this impacted her? And that's what we're going to have a look at for all 5 of the units. So Gianna has gone from a 30% pick rate to around a 24% in G3. Win rate has basically stayed the same. And in G1, she's dropped about 8% usage, but her win rate's dropped about 1%, 1.15%. So sizable. So yeah, a small drop, I would say. A very small drop, still very used. Another one that we want to look at was the one that everyone was complaining about the most for a long time. This is Oliver. In G3, Oliver's gone from a 45.55% pick rate. That was number one in usage, to a 24.63. That is a 45.93% drop. And in G1, similar, it's a 40.65% drop. In the win rate, in G3 has gone down nearly 2%, and in G1, about 1%. So that's a sizable drop, and we've all felt that one. Next up is the Light Hwarang. This one, in G3, it's been about a 24% drop in pick rate, and in G1, a 38% drop. So, sizable increase for G1, and a 2% win rate reduction in both. I actually think that's quite fair. So the next one was obviously Zeratu. Zeratu probably copped the hardest nerf of the 3. So in G3, we saw in both, we saw about a 50% drop in pick rate. This was also quite harsh because it also wasn't that high already. So Zeratu sort of copped a nerf when he was already not being used that much. In terms of win rate in G3, he's dropped over 2%. In G1, it's just under 1%. But that was, standalone. That was probably the biggest nerf. And now the last one, this was Joe Gunn, or as I like to call him, Joseph Gunn. This one, in a vacuum, seemed like the least impactful nerf. It just, on paper, it looked like it didn't really change him that much. It was just a slight adjustment. But if we look at the usage numbers, he's dropped 72.92% usage in G3, the most out of all of them. And in G1, it's 69.32. Now, in G3, his win rate's actually gone up by 0.67%, okay? And then in G1, it's dropped by 1.68. So basically, the question I ask now is, why am I pointing this out in particular? Now, I know many of you who watch my streams, twitch.tv/AussieSW, would have noticed over the last few weeks how I've brought up all the time how Joe Gunn was holding the CC playstyle in the current meta together. He has a really unique skill set. It shuts down passive, slow bruiser teams in the face of aggressive CC because of his skill too. Now, if we look at the nerf, again, it doesn't fundamentally change him, and even as an adjustment, it's only a small adjustment. Even into the same slow bruiser teams that you were using him into, I would argue that he's basically as effective as ever into those. And that's reflected by the very small change in the win rate. But why is he then dropping so much in usage? This is nearly 70%. This is a big drop. And in my opinion, it comes down to a really simple concept. which is effort versus reward. The 15% gain that he was getting gave consistent control over these passive attack bar increasing units like Nyx, Ragdoll, and Heigang. And now that it's 10%, his consistency is slightly worse. Now this small decrease means he requires more effort and higher rune quality to perform at the same level. And when you consider the alternatives, which is passive, stall, tanky bruiser comps, it's just easier to switch. Like, why would you bother putting in the effort? The little nerf didn't break Jogun, but it made CC teams less appealing overall when you could just run a more simple and more forgiving playstyle, which is this bruiser slow team. Now, in short, this tiny change has created a huge meta shift, because the effort required to run Jogun effectively is no longer justified, and you see that in his usage. Now, in the current patch, aggressive CC is not really a playstyle anymore, it's just Venhan. Like, all the other CC options basically fell off due to consistency, and Venhan stands apart as the only unit that remains reliable and rewarding to pick all the time. As a result of this, we've basically lost almost all of the unit diversity that we had, and it's shifted to an extremely top-heavy metagame. The easiest way I can prove this to you is looking at Oliver vs Venhan. So these were both the #1 usage units. This is pre-patch and post-patch season 35. Now Oliver was sitting at a 45.55% pick rate with a 49.93% win rate. So bang on around 50% win rate, and the pick rate, of course, was very high. It was Oliver, we were all sick of him. Now if we look at Venhan, he's got a 49.01% pick rate, so it's slightly higher than Oliver, but the win rate is nearly 52%. It is insane for a unit with this level of usage to have a win rate that high. You see win rates of 52% on counterpick units that are only used against certain things. 52 is a crazy number. We're seeing a counterpick unit like the Win Nobara seeing a big jump in play because of this one unit. This is just further enforcing how narrow the meta has become. Rather than the diversity that we had previously, the meta is now revolving around Venhan and the other units that answer him. If we look basically at the overall pick rate concentration for the pre-patch and post-patch, we can see in the previous patch, the number 10 picked unit was at a rate of 19.52%. 30th unit was 8.62, and the 40th was 7.58. Now, if we look at the current patch, number 10 is 20.87%. Number 30 is 9.55%, and number 40 is 7.75%. Now, if you don't know what this basically just means that across all tiers of usage, units are becoming more concentrated at the top. So basically, the amount of units we are using that are viable is decreasing, and the diversity is just collapsed at the top with the same units that you're seeing all the time. Because of this, we are seeing an extremely polarized meta. If you're not drafting Venhan-based CC, the optimal alternative is a slow, passive bruiser team or an RNG-driven unit that, you might win if you get lucky. Honestly, since the game's gone on for so long, you are rewarded for doing so. And this is where these slow, passive bruiser teams and RNG-driven units come in. These drafts are naturally better as the game goes on. They punish resists and poor skill execution, and require significantly less perfect plays. And more importantly, they benefit directly from a meta where CC is either all in on Venhan or pretty much non-existent. It's here where I want to draw your attention back to a video by Say that he made a few months back. It's probably the best video I've seen on the subject matter, and I mention this video all the time on stream. It really outlines the problem with all these high RNG units being so common in a competitive metagame. I'm going to link this video in the description. I highly recommend that you watch it. It's also worth remembering that a few seasons ago, the community pushed back very loudly against this slow bruiser-centric meta, one that was largely defined, if you remember, by units like Zeratu and Dark Panda. At the time, the outcry was pretty damn clear. That style of play was unhealthy, unfun, and way too dominant. No one wanted to see it. The fact that we're now drifting back towards a similar meta signals a deeper issue. It's either one of two things. It's either that Com2uS didn't meaningfully take that feedback into account, They did fix it with the previous balance patch. They moved away from it, but we've gone right back to it. Or alternatively, and this is the one I think is probably more likely, is that they've underestimated how their balance changes would interact with the existing RTA ecosystem, which would basically show that they lack a fundamental understanding of how the RTA meta really works. So as a result, let's have a look at some of the units that have risen post-patch that really show this problem. So I want to start with Heigang. Now, Heigang's a unique case versus all these. He's actually decreased in usage overall. He was previously at a 33.2% and is now at 31.09, but he's actually gone from the 5th most picked to the 3rd, and that's just because so many people are picking Benhan, and we're very top heavy. Now for the rest of these, we've got, I'm just going to go through these quite quickly. Nyx has seen a 72.3% increase. The Wind Monkey King has seen an over 3,000% increase in usage. This is basically because it wasn't used at all before. Seimei has seen a 73.89% increase. Abellio's seen an over 100% increase in play. Chandra has seen a 41.96% increase. The Light Unicorn has seen a 38.05% increase. And to a lesser extent, Annabelle and the Wind Pudding have seen minor increases in play. Now, I just want to note this is all G3 data for this section of the video. So you can see a lot of RNG units, a lot of slow bruiser units that are just extending the game, and I'm sure if you guys watched the most recent Legend tournament, you would know exactly what I mean, even if you don't play RTA at a somewhat high level. Interesting. So again, once again, we're slowing the game down at the end. There's the same. This is just fucking disgusting, dude. Are we fucking seeing this? I really like the way Sphinx drafts, in my opinion. I think it's really nice. Fuck, I take it back. Fucking take it back so quickly. So fucking quickly, like you wouldn't believe. Now, I do want to give Comtois a bit of credit here. Not every RNG heavy unit or frustrating unit benefited from this shift. A few historically really annoying units have actually declined in usage from this patch. Notably, Josephine has seen a 26.84% decrease, and the Fire Megami has seen an 18.44% decrease, and Gyo has seen a 35.63% decrease, which is quite significant because her usage was already kind of low. Despite this, Fire Megami and Josephine still firmly remain around the top 10 highest units in G3 RTA. This is a step in the right direction, but I mean, the community outcry against the Fire Megami has been pretty loud. As much as I don't think he's super unhealthy for the game, I think people are just annoyed at that unit exists. Josephine's a different story. I do think Josephine is a problem for the game. Too much RNG with this unit, but yeah, they're still around, but they have decreased in usage. So if we bring this all together now, we can see what actually happened to RTA in its current state. If we look at Jogun's nerf and the impact this had on the meta, we can see that while the nerf did not fundamentally change the unit or even really weaken it itself, it absolutely weakened the incentive to play aggressive CC as a broader playstyle. It didn't disappear, it was basically monopolized by one or maybe two units, Venhan and I guess you could say the Dark Monkey too, which now stands at the peak of RTA, being in every second match with a 52% win rate. As a consequence of this, the remaining space is filled with slow, passive bruiser teams and even more RNG units. These slower games are far more susceptible to violent procs or resistances impacting games. And even without those arguments of RNG, the Summoners War community was very clear 4 months ago when this playstyle was outright rejected by the community. The end result is an RTA environment that feels slower, less skillful, and increasingly decided by dice rolls rather than your own skill. Now, in a competitive turn-based game like Summoners War, RNG needs to exist, okay? I'm not saying that we need to remove all RNG. That is a really bad argument. But in a competitive game, you need to keep it to a minimum, and you don't want it to be a defining factor in match outcomes. And pretty much that's ultimately why RTA feels so unfun right now. The meta has become rigid, top-heavy, and increasingly hostile to skillful playstyles. You are basically encouraged to use 1 or 2 units at the high end, and your remaining options are slow, boring, and just ultimately playstyles that people do not want to play. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I appreciate it if you stayed to the end. Just want to remind you, if you could please subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. And hop around the streams once in a while. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video.